questions. I'd like to introduce first my constituent, Stephanie Granados. She lives in Loveland, Colorado, with her mother, Monica, and younger brother, Axel. She's 24 years old, bilingual in English and Spanish, a Christian woman who works as a restaurant server and is a loyal friend to those around her. Unfortunately, Mr. Secretary, that's only what I wish I could tell you about Stephanie. Stephanie's dead. A year ago, this young woman was poisoned. She never made it to age 24. Her mother's only glimpse of her now is in old photographs, and her brother misses his older sister. Stories like that are normal conversations in Colorado. Stories like this begin with fentanyl. But where does fentanyl begin? Many times it starts among chemical manufacturing firms in China. Companies like the recently indicted Hebei Sinaloa Trading Company from the Hebei province in China. It manufactures and advertises the drug's ingredients to buyers in Mexico. Using common mail and import fraud tools like forged custom documents and falsely labeled packages, firms ship the product upon purchase to drug dens in cities like Guadalajara. After preparation, these facilities finish the product and smuggle it by truck, by car, and by humans across our southern border. Chopped into counterfeit pills that are pressed to look exactly like legitimate pharmaceuticals or mixed with cocaine or other substances, Americans buy those drugs. And it's like a walking minefield. These illegal drugs are then used to kill American citizens. According to the CDC, over 150 people are dying every day because of synthetic opioids like fentanyl. CDC's National Center for Health Statistics reported 79,770 opioid-involved overdose fatalities in 2022, and over 80% of opioid deaths are attributed to fentanyl. In my home state of Colorado, fentanyl deaths remain near record levels. According to the Denver Post, more Coloradans have died of ingesting the drug in 2022 than overdosed on all drugs in 2016. And according to the Department of Justice's latest report on the subject, 64% of federal arrests involve non-citizens committing crimes, despite them comprising only 7% of the population. Secretary Mayorkas, going to ask a couple questions and answer them for you before I give you a chance to respond. But is China responsible? I'm sorry. Recently, you spoke at the Aspen Security Forum and stated that China bears responsibility for this. Is China responsible for keeping the southern border open to smugglers? Nope. Is China responsible for the Mexican cartel's emboldened attitude in the American drug trade? Nope. Is China responsible for the impunity of more illegal aliens committing crimes in America? Nope. Is China responsible for the record high 98 aliens on the terrorist watch list crossing the southwest border in 2022? Nope. Is China responsible for the 856 illegal aliens who died while crossing the southwest border last year? No. And that's more than 300 deaths, by the way, than 2021, and more than 3 times as many in 2020. Is China responsible for the 9,200 aliens with criminal convictions crossing the border illegally just this year to date? Nope. Is China responsible for the estimated 1.5 million illegal alien gotaways that crossed the border undetected under your watch? Nope. Is China responsible for the 1.2 million removable aliens who have been told by a judge that they must leave the U.S. but insist on staying? Secretary Mayorkas, it is your responsibility to secure our border against fentanyl trafficking. The fentanyl killing thousands of Americans every year is a direct result of your dereliction. When people die of fentanyl poisoning, it is your fault. What would you say to Stephanie Granados' family if they were here right now?
Congressman, we grieve the loss of any life as a result of the toxicity, the devastation of fentanyl. The challenge of fentanyl is not new. It has been escalating for more than 5 years. I believe there were more than 50,000 overdose deaths from fentanyl in 2020. This is a scourge that all of us have to work together to combat. And we in the Department of Homeland Security, with our federal partners, are taking it to the traffickers to an unprecedented degree through innovative operations targeting criminals. And I stand by my statement at Aspen that China does bear responsibility because many of the precursor chemicals and the pill press equipment that are used to manufacture fentanyl does originate from there. This is a complex problem. We are taking it to the criminals, and I look forward to working with you, Congressman, to address this challenge, which has been only building over many years in this country.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yields back. Gentlelady from Texas recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. You have repeatedly been before us and indicated your humble beginnings and the passion and commitment in which you serve America and take very seriously your job here as Secretary of Homeland Security. On that basis, I have a number of quick questions that I'm going to ask for a sense of urgency and rapidness so that I can assure that all have been answered. First of all, I want to make clear that this is an oversight hearing, not an impeachment hearing. This is a hearing to address the questions of the work that has been done. And so to that end, just as a factual basis, there's been a lot of hollering about the entry on the border, operational control. And I'm asking for a brief question. We know that the federal government ended Title 42. Have crossings gone down?
Yes, they have. The approach that we have taken, Congresswoman, of expanding lawful pathways, safe, orderly, and lawful pathways for individuals, and at the same time delivering consequences to those who do not take advantage of those lawful pathways.
And part of that
has been working. The challenge, of course, remains.
My numbers suggest 70% that they've gone down, and it also suggests that the Biden administration has put in stricter requirements for asylum. Is that correct?
We did. We are delivering consequences for those who do not take advantage of the lawful pathways.
But you still believe in the humane infrastructure of America that started with the Statue of Liberty and realizing people flee persecution, political dynasties, if you will, that cause violence and a forcing of leaving. Is that part of our thinking here in the country?
Congresswoman, our laws, our refugee laws, our asylum laws are one of our proudest traditions as a country of refuge.
So would you say, having been asked this over and over again, that the United States, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and all of the hardworking men and women at the border have operational control or have a form of presence, that they are aware of what's going on in the border and that they're working to secure the border every single day?
As we define that term, Congresswoman, we do.
CISA, has been called all things, maybe even not American. Is it an important element of securing elections as it did in the 2020 election in 2022?
The security of elections, our election system is a component of our country's critical infrastructure. To protect the safety, security, and integrity of the election process is a significant priority of this government. And the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency works very closely with election officials in state and local jurisdictions to ensure the safety and security of the election system.
I have two more questions, and I must quickly move forward. The ADL has indicated that there have been 3,697 anti-Semitic incidences, 36% increase from 2021. What is your department doing to protect the Jewish community? And within the new U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, what kind of commitments have you made? And I have another question, but I think this is extremely important.
Congresswoman, there has been a rise in anti-Semitism in this country, the rise in other ideologies of hate. Our responsibility as the Department of Homeland Security is when there is a connectivity between an ideology, whatever that ideology might be, and violence. It is the prevention of violence that really prompts our engagement with local communities around the country.
Thank you. I want to keep in touch on those issues. We all face communities who are certainly targets of that kind of violence. I want to suggest that immigration is a national and federal authorized responsibility. We see states like Texas and Florida that have spent billions in Texas that have bused individuals to the vice president's home and to other places. Can you tell me how detrimental in questioning states getting involved in immigration issues and how confident you feel that you are protecting the American people and incidences like that, including incidences at the border, which I'll put in a record. Texas trooper alleges inhumane treatment of migrants by state officials along southern border. But how you are responding to that responsibility that you have?
Congresswoman, the safety and security of the American people is our highest priority. Law enforcement is most effective when it is executed collaboratively in cooperation.
Time of the
I'd like to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to place into the record the CBS News, July 18, Texas trooper alleges inhumane treatment of migrants by state officials along southern border. And Washington Post, southern border eerily quiet after policy shift on asylum seekers. I ask unanimous consent to place that into the record.
Without objection. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
2 million encounters and releases under your watch. So not including the Title 42 expulsions, not including violent criminals. Of those 2 million plus that you've encountered and released, how many have you told to go home?
Congressman, individuals who are released are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings under the law where they can make their claim for relief. If their claim for relief is not satisfied, they are subject to removal from the United States.
Right, subject to removal sounds very different than actually removed. So I'm not interested in the process. I'm not interested in what people are subject to. 2 million people encountered and released. Not the expulsions under Title 42, not the criminals. How many of those people have you deported?
So, Congressman, a few points. Number one.
Just how many of the people? I just want to know how many. It's just a number.
Congressman, we are dealing with a completely broken immigration system.
I get it. No, Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to let you burn my 5 minutes. Do you know the answer? Do you know the number of people out of that 2 million that you've removed that aren't criminals?
I do know that we have removed more aggravated felons.
Right, I'm not asking about them. I've caveated that away because here's what I'm sort of getting and what your non-responsiveness is demonstrating. The mayorkas doctrine is this. If you show up at the border and get released into the country, if you don't commit a specific aggravated felony, which, by the way, doesn't include a lot of assault and battery, doesn't include a lot of bad domestic violence, but if you're not one of the people who commit those crimes, you get to stay forever. Is that a fair characterization of your doctrine?
No, that is false.
Then tell me how many you're sending home.
No, that is false.
Okay, well, but you don't know the number of how many you've sent home. Here's another number. 1.2 million people today have been through your entire process, right? They've been through what you call a removal proceeding is just an amnesty dance. Because after the 1.2 million people get an order from the judge saying that they don't have a basis to be here, you still don't remove them. Like, what's your plan to remove those people?
Congressman, that is false.
Okay, how many of them then? Just give me the number.
Congressman, in this country, there are between 11 and 12 million.
Right, but I'm asking about a subset that you won't send home. And the reason you're smirking about it and the reason you won't answer my question is because everybody gets the joke. And the sad thing is it's not just us here, it's the cartels who get the joke too. And so now what you've done to execute this mayorkas doctrine where so long as you don't commit a crime, you get to stay here and burden our hospitals, burden our schools, burden our social services, burden our jails. You've sent the message to the cartels and then you've taken this app and you've digitized illegal immigration and you've scaled it to the moon. Like this app that you've got everybody downloading is like the Disney fast pass into the country, never to be subject to actual removal, just removal proceedings as you call them. That app doesn't do any search of their criminal history in their home country, does it?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Well, I'm sure, but just answer the question. Does the app that you are out there promoting do any search of people's criminal history in their home country?
Congressman, Customs and Border Protection screens and vets individuals whom they encounter.
Your app, it either has the functionality to test their criminal history in their home country, or it doesn't. By the way, if it did, you'd have already told me. It doesn't. And then the other epic failure of this that's empowered the cartels is that in these processing centers you've set up in other countries to just wave them all in at a rapid pace, you've had to shut them down in Nuevo Laredo because the cartels were standing outside extorting people. Isn't that right?
Congressman, that is false.
Oh, really? So why did you shut down that facility in Nuevo Laredo?
And the point of safe, orderly, and lawful pathways is to reduce the number of encounters at our southwest border.
But wait a second. You've just shifted those encounters, because right now, for the first time in modern history, more people are showing up at the ports of entry than running through some bush in Yuma, Arizona. And the reason they're showing up at the ports of entry is because you've got the turnstile open, where so long as they've gone and downloaded this app, you just let them in. I got one final question for you, and it's an important one. Is Mexico an ally in this fight against illegal immigration?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, it's hilarious and somewhat troubling that you say that, because, like, I'm looking at the El Chapo trial where President Nieto took a $100 million bribe from the Sinaloa cartel. Do you think that the subsequent presidents following Nieto weren't offered a bribe by the cartel or didn't take the bribe?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Right, but you can disagree all you want, but what you won't provide is any number. And when you sit there and just kind of ostensibly disagree without any facts, it shows people what the real gig is. The Mexican government is captive to the cartels. They are doing the bidding of the cartels, and based on your response today, so are you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Appreciate your service and appreciate your testifying today. Last week, Director Wray sat in the hot seat. By the way, is it still warm, or did you bring some potholders?
I am prepared to answer the questions of this committee.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman.
Director Wray testified that a lot of the animus that has been conjured up against government in this Congress particularly, but around the country, have given white supremacists the belief that their actions may be justified. And it's hurt morale at his agency, and it's jeopardized the lives of some of his agents. A situation in Cincinnati where a man went out and he didn't kill anybody, but he tried to. He was going to go to the Cincinnati base. There have been others. Has your division of government, Homeland Security, been affected? The employees' morale been affected by these white supremacist threats and statements? And have you been, any of your agents and sites been the victim of violence?
Congressman, it is the anti-government sentiments and their connectivity to violence that is the subject of my discussions with many of our frontline personnel and the threats that they have encountered as a result.
Has there been any violence directed at any of your sites?
There has, and we have an agency within the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Protective Service, remarkable men and women in uniform who protect federal facilities and the personnel who work in them.
There was a court ruling yesterday, and I didn't get into depth, but I believe it suspended a program that the president, and that includes you, tried to have for border entry and who could come to this country and seek asylum, and limit it to some extent. And it was stayed, I believe, by a court. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. It's the Circumvention of Lawful Pathways regulation that we promulgated as part of our process to expand lawful pathways for individuals, and at the same time deliver consequences for those who do not use those pathways.
Were there similarities to the program that the President Biden and you had stayed, that President Trump had also tried to implement or did implement?
It is a different program than the one that President Trump implemented, Congressman.
Okay. Did it have any parts of it?
No, and I will not speak much about this, Congressman, because the matter is the subject of litigation. But President Trump issued a transit ban on individuals, and our regulation is not a ban. It shifts the evidentiary burden, it raises it, and creates a rebuttable presumption, which is quite distinct from a ban.
Could you say that was a middle ground between what President Trump had and what the court maybe wanted because the court stayed it and didn't allow it to occur?
Congressman, I'm
not
able
getting
to.
anywhere.
I'm not able to comment any further, given the fact that it's a matter of pending litigation.
Thank you, sir. I've had a problem, which is more local in nature, I guess. Constituents who've complained that the opportunity to get certified by the Global Entry Program in Memphis, Tennessee, has been thwarted. That they've been told they need to go to Jackson, Tennessee, and Memphis is a city of over 1 million people. Jackson's a city of about 100,000. Why our folks would have to go to Jackson to get their global entry form is hard for me to comprehend. They said that they had to travel there. We've tried to get in touch with the people at Global Entry. I think we've got a phone call Friday, but we found it very difficult to get in touch. The phone number that we were given by some people with TSA as a kind of a speedy number, the number we need to get action. My staff said that the phone was hardly ever answered. They mostly stayed on hold. Could you ask the folks, because they come under you at Global Entry, to look into why citizens in Memphis have to go to Jackson? They were told us because some of their people have to help FedEx. Everybody should help FedEx, but besides that, they need to help the citizens of Memphis get their global entries as well. So can you look into that for me?
I will, Congressman. The Global Entry Program is one of 2 trusted traveler programs. Global Entry is under U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and PreCheck is under the Transportation Security Administration. Those are 2 very successful trusted traveler programs that enhance the security of travel in the United States, as well as facilitated that travel. I'd be pleased to look into that issue.
Thank you, sir. And are you from Miami?
No, I was born in Cuba and fled the communist takeover of Cuba to the United States.
You didn't come to Miami at all?
I did. We lived in Miami for a couple of years before my father found work elsewhere.
Thank you. Well, I'm in the same status, except I didn't go to Cuba first. But I did go to Miami, and then my father found better employment elsewhere. Thank you, and appreciate your work.